Hi guys, just going to talk through these pages of the number 7 pack, all about multipliers, specifically multipliers used to increase or decrease numbers by a certain percentage. Okay, so hopefully you've watched the introductory video on this. This is just literally going to be me going through the pack page. Okay, so we've got an example here, and it says to increase £50 by 10%, you multiply 50 by 1.1. And the reason for that is this 0.1 bit represents the extra 10%, because 10% as a decimal is 0.1. This bit represents 100%. So overall, if we increase something by 10%, we are finding 110%. Okay, so the method is to turn the percentage into a decimal first. So 50% as a decimal is 0.5. If we want to increase by 50%, we add that 0.5 to 1. So that would give us 1.5. To decrease by 50%, we would so to increase by 50%, we would times by 1.5. To decrease by 50%, we would take that away from 1, take this 0.5 away from 1, and that would give us 0.5 again. Okay, so to decrease by 50%, we would times by 0.5. Okay, 15% as a decimal is 0.15. Just divide by 100 to turn a percentage into a decimal. So to increase something by 15%, we would times by 1.15. Remember, just add that to 1. Okay, because effectively we'd be finding 115%. To decrease by 15%, we would take that away from 1. So 1 take away 0.15 would leave us 0.85. Okay, because effectively we'd be finding 85%. Okay, this one, 35%, divide by 100 would be 0.35. If we want to increase something by 35%, we would times by 1.35. Decrease something by 35%, 1 take away 0.35 is 0.65. Okay, if we want to increase something by 1%, so just a small amount, we need to divide it by 100, always the same thing in this one. If we divide that by 100, we will get 0.01. Okay, so different to this one at the top, 10%. Okay, so to increase something by 1%, we would times by 1.01. If we take it away from 1, we would get 0.99. So if you think about that, to decrease something by 1%, we are finding what's left. We're finding 99%. So that's why we get this. Now the table's filled in slightly differently, and we have to work out the other things. So what percentage turns into 0.05? Well, if we go the other way and times by 100, that would be 5%. To increase by 5%, we would times by 1.05. To decrease by 5%, we would take 0.05 away from 1, and that would leave us 0.95. 12%, to turn it into a decimal, divide by 100, 0.12. Add it to 1, we get 1.12. If we take it away from 1, we get 0.88. Okay, so tricky on this one. We've been left with 0.25. That means we've taken something away from 1, and that something was 0.75, which is 75%. Okay, if we want to increase something by 75%, we would times by 1.75. 4.5%. Sorry. We divide by 100, that will give us 0.045. Okay, everything just moves down 2 places in the place value table. Add that to 1, we would have 1.045. Take it away from 1, that would give us 0.955. Okay, you can use a calculator for that if you like. Okay, we've added something to 1 and we got this. So that something must have been 0.175. Turn that back into a percentage by times them by 100, and that would be 17.5%, 17.5%. We take this away from 1, we get 0.825. 0.65 times by 100 is 65%. So 1.65 if we want to increase something by 65%, 0.35 if we want to decrease something by 65%. Now, what have we taken away to be left with 0? What have we taken away from 1? Well, we must have taken away 1 from 1 to be left with 0, which means that this is 100% if we follow the normal rules, times in by 100. If we want to increase something by 100%, we would add that to 1. Sorry, we would add this to 1 and get 2. To decrease something by 100%, we would take this away from 1, and that's why we got 0. If you think about that, decreasing something by 100% means getting rid of it completely. And then slightly harder ones here, above 100%. So what is this as a decimal? Well, it follows the same rules. Divide by 100, we would get 1.2. If we want to increase by 120%, we would add this to 1, and that would give us 2.2. To decrease by that, we would take that away from 1, and that would give us negative 0.2. And the final one on that page, divide by 100, that would give us 2. To increase by 200%, we would add this to 1, and that would give us 3. To decrease by 200%, we would take 2 away from 1 and give us negative 1. Okay, I'll go through the next page on the next video.